everybody, Zach again at newtutorial.com, coming in making a video for you today. Was on Facebook the other day and ran into a pastor who was attacking the Hebrew roots. There was someone, I guess, on my news feed who had shared the Way documentary and had drawn the attention of a pastor who came in and he said his heart broke for the people on the video, because they were so deceived and all this stuff. Anyway, so I engaged with him a little bit on this thread and, conversed back and forth. And I went over to his YouTube channel. I believe it's, let's see what we got here. It's newcovenantbaptist.org is his website. He's the pastor of New Covenant Baptist Church, and that's his website, .org. And it's a fundamental leaning Baptist church, a lot more strict than the Southern Baptist church I was raised in, even though they were pretty strict. But this is it's the fundamental Baptist, if you're familiar with that sect of Baptist denomination. Anyway, so I'm going on his YouTube channel, and he has this thing on Christmas there, and we've been on the Christmas bandwagon here lately on my channel. And so he's defending Christmas from the Baptist point of view, obviously, and he uses a verse that I have never heard used for Christmas to defend Christmas before. I have heard it oftentimes to defend the Sunday Sabbath, but I've never heard it used for defending Christmas. So here's the clip. Let's take a look.
And so it really comes down to our Christian liberty. And specifically, verse 5, one man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. So that's the key verse. Any holiday that it comes to. This even addresses the topic of the Saturday Sabbath or the Sunday Sabbath. Some religious groups today, like the Hebrew Roots movement or the Seventh-day Adventists and other groups, are saying that we need to be celebrating the Sabbath starting Friday evening and going through Sunday evening, as the Jews did originally, but we are under liberty under the new covenant. And so that's what Romans 14. Romans 14 I consider the liberty chapter in many ways.
Well, first off, it's Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, not Friday sundown to Sunday sundown. That'd be 2 days. But let's look at this again.
And so that's what Romans 14. Romans 14 I consider the liberty chapter in many ways.
He considers it the liberty chapter, the freedom chapter, although he only quoted one verse from the whole chapter. Romans 14, he quoted verse 5, one verse, and that makes it the liberty chapter. Never mind the fact that the word liberty never even shows up in the chapter. He considers it the liberty chapter. The reason he considers Romans 14, actually verse 5, the liberty chapter is because they use that verse for anything and everything that they need to rationalize to be okay, and with Christian doctrine, their own made-up doctrine. You want to do Sabbath on Sunday? Well, Romans 14, verse 5. Now, in this guy's case, you want to do Christmas? Well, Romans 14, verse 5. Let's take a look at Romans 14, verse 5. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully convinced or persuaded in his own mind. And right there, Zach, you say, look, you can decide what you want to do. I mean, it's up to everybody's mind. You make up your mind what you want to do on that day, and on any day, and you can do it. I mean, it's just a way to rationalize, doing whatever is right in your own eyes. We see that in the Old Testament as being a bad thing, or a bad road to go down. But let's take a look at the rest of the chapter. Let's take a look at just the first 6 verses in this chapter and see what the context is. It's not about anything that has to do with Sabbath worship. It's not. In fact, the word Sabbath doesn't even occur in the chapter or in the book of Romans. So it's not about the Sabbath. And it definitely ain't about Christmas. Let's take a look at the first 6 verses of Romans 14, and let's see if we can determine the context of Romans chapter 14. Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let him that which eateth not judge him that eateth, for God has received him. Who art thou that judgest another man's servant? To his own master he standeth or falleth. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. And now the verse, one man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. And then verse 6, the next verse, he that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he gives God thanks, and he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and gives God thanks. Now, I'm just spitballing here. It's a shot in the dark. I'm going to submit to you that maybe, just perhaps, Romans 14, starting out, is talking about eating something. Eating. You see, here's the facts, folks. We don't have the letter that was given to Paul, that Paul is now responding to with the letter to the Romans. Okay, Paul is writing a letter to the Romans. He got a letter, he received a letter, and this is his reply back to the Romans. So we have no idea, we don't have that letter, we have no idea what the context is that he's replying to, but we can get a good clue based through historical antiquity writings. It has nothing to do with the Sabbath. The word Sabbath, like I said, doesn't even occur in the book of Romans or in Romans chapter 14. So what's the context? He's talking about eating. And if you look back through antiquity and historical writings, we know that there was a gigantic debate in Judea, in Jerusalem at the time, amongst Jews and Christians about what were the right days to fast on. What day should I fast? There were people who argued Wednesday and Friday. There were people who argued Monday and Thursday. And, the publicans and the Pharisees all had different days that they fasted, and they argued with one another which were the right days to fast. In fact, Orthodox Christianity, many sects of Orthodox Christianity today still fast regularly on Wednesday and Friday. And so, if you go back through the writings of antiquity, and I'll include a link in the description below where you can look at some of these arguments, and they provide some of the writings of antiquity to make my point and my case for me that they were arguing over what days to fast. That's the context of Romans chapter 14. And if you use it in a way that says, I can do anything, and rationalize it to, promote whatever doctrine you have, if you want to keep the Sunday Sabbath, you can't use Romans 14 verse 5 in that context because it's not about the Sabbath. It's always been about fasting. And so here's a guy through his seminary training or through doctrinal training from somebody else has been convinced that Romans 14 is about liberty, the ability to do whatever we want, when it comes to our doctrine, inventing whatever doctrine we have. It's just false. That's just wrong. It was always about fasting. It is not about the Sabbath, and it definitely ain't about Christmas like he was using to justify in this video. There's lots of other great things in this video. We may come back to this video and tear it apart some more because there's all kinds of juicy gems. I haven't done this since Steven Anderson, but I think I'm getting a hankering to do it again. So anyway, I thought you might enjoy that. Anytime someone comes to you and brings Romans 14 verse 5 as proof text that you can keep the Sunday Sabbath, they haven't studied enough. They haven't gone back to history and seen what the argument was all about. And they haven't read the verses before and after verse 5 in chapter 14 of the book of Romans. It's been about eating. It's always been about eating. It's about fasting. What days were we supposed to fast? And Paul says, hey, man, if you want to fast on this day, fine. If you want to fast on that day, fine. There's no commandment in the Torah that says what day you're supposed to fast, except for Yom Kippur, which he mentions in the book of Acts, specifically. I think it's chapter 27. So that's the only day. If you want to fast on Thursdays to be close to God, give it to God. If you want to fast on Mondays to be close to God, you give it to God and you fast. You do it. If you don't want to, fine. It's also about giving thanks to God. It doesn't matter because you're not commanded to do it. It's as simple as that. All right, guys, we'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.